My name is Emily Hart, and I once paid for my father's surgery with money that was supposed to be mine, only to learn my parents had already spent it on my sister's car. Months later, when they tried to take my home through a lawsuit, I stood in that courtroom, held up the forged receipts they submitted, and tore them in half right in front of the judge. The look on my mother's face, worth every cent. Where are you watching from? Type your city in the comments. I want to know where strong women are tuning in from tonight. Because this is the story of how I stopped being their scapegoat. It started, like most betrayals do, with a smile too smug for the occasion. I drove up to my parents' modest two-bedroom house in Tulsa, Oklahoma, expecting an ordinary Sunday dinner. The sun was just dipping below the horizon, casting soft pinks across the worn front porch, and a pie probably store-bought sat cooling on the windowsill like something out of a Norman Rockwell painting. I had no idea that within 15 minutes the ground beneath my idea of family would start to crack. "Emily, come on in, honey," my mother called out from the kitchen as I stepped inside. Her voice cheerful but clipped. That clipped part, my gut noticed. I should have turned right back around. Dad was already seated in his recliner in the living room, remote in hand, a blanket over his lap despite the late spring heat. He looked thinner than usual. Pale almost. But when I leaned in to kiss his cheek, he patted my arm like nothing was wrong. The table was set for four, me, Mom, Dad, and my younger sister, Rachel. She wasn't there yet. "Traffic," Mom explained, busying herself with salad tongs. "She'll be here any minute." We made small talk, whether my job at the real estate firm downtown, Dad's favorite sports team's losing streak. I waited until the meatloaf was halfway gone before I asked the question I'd come for. "Did the insurance check come in yet?" It was a casual question, lightly delivered with a sip of iced tea in hand, but the air around the table turned heavier than that meatloaf. "Oh, it came," Mom said, not even looking up. "We bought Rachel a new Honda. Finally, she's been needing one for months." I paused, fork midair. "I'm sorry, you used my insurance payout." Mom finally looked at me, smug, like she'd been waiting for this moment. "We thought you'd be happy for your sister. She needed something reliable to get to her nursing classes. You're doing fine, Em." "Fine." I could barely breathe. My voice dropped icy and level. "So I guess you didn't see the medical results." That got her attention. Her hands froze over the casserole dish. "What results?" she asked, blinking. Her smile faltered. "They're Dad's." I pushed back from the table slowly. "The ones marked urgent, the envelope I left last week." Dad looked up sharply. "What envelope?" "I left it on the hall table," I said. "It was addressed to me, but I brought it here to talk to you both in person. You weren't home, so I thought." My mother's face had gone pale. "Emily, what did it say?" I reached into my bag, pulled out a copy. I'd made two just in case. "Early-stage lung cancer, operable but urgent, and expensive." Dad stared at the page in silence. I saw the way his jaw clenched, saw the tremble in his fingers as he read the lines meant for Mimi, the one who had been quietly covering part of his insurance for 3 years. "You never told us," Mom said suddenly, her voice rising. "You never asked," I replied, folding my napkin and placing it neatly by my untouched plate. There was silence. Thick, the kind that settles when truth is finally louder than denial. "Rachel's car?" I asked, my voice brittle. "You thought that was more important than this." "She needed it," Mom whispered. "So does Dad," I shot back. "Only his is a little more urgent than leather seats and Bluetooth." That's when Rachel finally walked in, keys twirling on her finger, cheerful as ever. "Hey, did you see the new ride?" She grinned, oblivious. Nobody answered her. The next morning, I sipped burnt diner coffee in the parking lot of my office, too wired to go in, too drained to go home. I hadn't slept. I kept replaying the dinner in my mind, my mother's smirk, the way she said we bought Rachel a new Honda like it was a punchline, and then Dad's face when he read those results. Not surprise, not confusion, guilt. I didn't go to work. I just sat in my car, engine off, and waited. At 9:12 a.m. my phone buzzed. "Mom, where's the envelope now?" I didn't reply. 10 minutes later, a second message. "Mom, call me now." I turned the phone off and drove past my parents' house, slowly, unnoticed. That's when I saw her, my mother, in a ratty housecoat and yellow gloves, standing knee-deep in the outdoor trash bin, tearing through black garbage bags like a woman possessed. Part of me wanted to stop and yell, "It's too late." But I didn't. She didn't find it, of course. The original had been shredded by now, buried beneath yesterday's news and chicken bones. But the damage was already done. By the time I parked in front of my apartment, she was calling again. And again. I let it go to voicemail. She left 5. The 6th time I answered. "Where is it, Emily?" Her voice was ragged, panicked. "That envelope, that letter, you said, what did you say? Cancer, is that real?" I took a breath. "It's real. And you left it here, why? I thought you'd care." A beat of silence on her end. Then the blame began to bubble up like it always did. "How could you not tell us immediately? You left something like that in the trash." "I didn't throw it out. I left it on the hall table," I said flatly. "Right next to the bowl of keys, you know, the spot where you put all your unopened mail." "Don't be sarcastic, Emily." "I'm not, I'm being accurate." The line crackled with tension. Then, "You should have followed up." "How were we supposed to know it was important?" "Because it was marked urgent, Mom. And because I've been paying part of Dad's insurance for years and no one ever asked why." She went quiet again. "You used that money for Rachel's car?" I asked, voice breaking now not from anger but from exhaustion. "Do you know how many months I covered it when Dad was unemployed?" Quietly. "No credit, no questions, just did it." "She needed the car to finish nursing school," she said weakly. "So Dad could die, but God forbid Rachel misses clinicals." "That's not fair." "No," I snapped. "What's not fair is me getting blindsided at dinner with a revelation that my contribution to this family went toward a Honda Civic with Apple CarPlay instead of a life-saving surgery." A long silence. Then she tried a softer tone. "We didn't know. You didn't want to know." Another silence. This time I ended the call. I was still sitting on my couch, staring at a blank TV screen when Rachel showed up. She didn't knock. She never did. She just waltzed in like the condo was hers, like she'd forgotten this wasn't her personal storage unit with a guest bathroom. She held up her phone. "Mom said you're being dramatic." I said nothing. "You're seriously mad about the car?" Still nothing. "You told her Dad has cancer?" she asked, squinting like it was some far-off rumor. "Like real cancer?" I stared at her. "What other kind is there?" She blinked. "You know I need the car for rotations, right? It's not like I'm just cruising around." "You didn't even ask where the money came from." "Because they said it was the insurance check." "It was. So what's the problem?" My laugh came out sharper than I intended. "You still don't get it, do you?" Rachel crossed her arms. "You always act like you're the only one who sacrifices. You think I like living with Mom and Dad, that I haven't had to give things up to. Name one." She flinched, just barely. "I'm not here to fight." "No, you're here to justify," I said. "But this time I'm not giving you that." She shifted her weight, looked around at the condo like it personally offended her. "Whatever, just let me know if Dad's actually like dying or whatever." And then she left, no apology, no remorse, just that signature Rachel exit, unbothered and oblivious. That night I opened my inbox and stared at the health portal again. The message blinked unread, even though I'd read it a dozen times. Recommendation. Schedule oncologist consultation. Coverage confirmed under Policy X. I was still covering him. I hadn't even told them I stopped, because I hadn't, because part of me still cared. But now I wasn't so sure. By Tuesday morning the air in my parents' house felt thick enough to chew. I only stopped by because Mom texted, "We need to talk." Bring the papers. No explanation, no apology, just an order, classic her. I walked in without removing my coat. Kitchen table was covered in printouts, hospital brochures, scribbled notes, and a calculator that looked like it had been through a war. Mom stood over it all, hair frizzy from stress, flipping pages like she was searching for a magic number that didn't exist. Dad wasn't in sight. "There you are," she said, not looking up. "Sit." The tone hit me instantly. Not "thank you for coming." Not "I'm sorry we ignored you." Just sit. Like I was 12 again and in trouble for leaving a towel on the floor. I stayed standing. She slid a packet across the table, estimated surgery costs. My throat tightened. "Emily, this is a lot," she said breathlessly, tapping the top sheet. "Insurance covers part but not everything. And with what happened to the check, well," she paused, eyes flickering. "We need you to help." Help, as if I hadn't already been helping for years. Before I could answer, the back door swung open and Dad walked in. Not slowly, not weakly like a man with early-stage cancer. Furious. "What's this?" he demanded, slapping a bill onto the table. "Your mother says you're refusing to help with the surgery." I blinked. "Refusing? I didn't refuse anything. I asked why the insurance money was spent on." "Your sister needed that car," he snapped before I could finish. His voice boomed loud enough to rattle the spice rack. "Your family needed you and you were nowhere." "Nowhere?" I repeated, stunned. Dad, I've been paying part of your insurance. He cut me off with a jab of his finger. Selfish, Emily, always have been. The words hit harder than I expected. Mom watched us like a referee unwilling to blow the whistle. Dad stepped closer, face flushed. I paid your way through school, I fed you, and now when your family needs you most. No, I said quietly, ice forming in my veins. You spent my insurance money. You ignored the diagnosis, and now you want me to fix it. The silence that followed was ugly. Mom stepped in, clutching a stack of papers to her chest like armor. Emily, be reasonable, this is your father. So that exempts him from responsibility, I asked. From accountability. You're twisting things, Dad barked. We're asking you to step up. I did step up for years, you just never noticed. My voice didn't crack, I didn't cry. I was past that stage, burnt out in a way only family can burn you. Dad exhaled sharply, pacing. We'll figure out another way, I shouldn't have expected you to care. That one stung. He knew it did. Wounds delivered by someone you love always aim for soft places. He stormed down the hall, slamming the bedroom door. Mom finally sank into a chair, rubbing her forehead. He's scared, she whispered. He didn't mean it. He said it, I replied, which means he meant it. She looked up, eyes glassy but defensive. We wouldn't even be in this situation if you had just kept us informed. A humorless laugh escaped me. I wasn't hiding anything. You weren't listening. The room went still. Something between us, something fragile, snapped. I grabbed my bag and headed for the door. Emily, wait, Mom called, her voice sharp with something desperate. I turned. You are going to help, right? She asked, teeth clenched around the word help. I opened the door. You spent that money, not me. Her face dropped. And right then, right as I stepped outside, hand on the railing, my phone buzzed. Unknown sender. A legal notice has been filed against you. I froze. Subject line, claim of ownership, 312 S Peoria Ave, your condo. A wave of cold washed over me so violently I nearly missed the screen door slamming behind me. Mom stood there, arms crossed, chin high. We told you we'd do whatever it takes. My heart pounded in my throat. What did you do? We filed a claim, she said, voice brittle and triumphant. The condo should have been ours, we helped you get it. No, I whispered, you didn't. Oh, don't be dramatic, she snapped. This is just to get your attention. That's not how lawsuits work. But she didn't seem to care, she was past logic. Rachel's car pulled into the driveway at that moment, sunlight glinting off the hood like a cruel reminder. Rachel stepped out, smiling until she saw our faces. What happened? Neither of us answered. She looked at me uncertain. Emily, I walked past her without a word. Because right then the betrayal wasn't a car. It was a signature on a legal document. It was the realization that my family wasn't just using me. They were coming for me. The walls of Ms. Denning's office were lined with degrees and courtroom sketches, but the first thing I noticed was the expression on her face, cool, unreadable, not impressed by drama. Which was good because mine felt like a hurricane. I'm being sued by my own parents, I said, handing over the notice. They're claiming partial ownership of my condo, based on absolutely nothing. She took the papers, scanned them in silence. Her silver-rimmed glasses perched halfway down her nose as she flipped through the legal jargon like she was reading a grocery list. Then she looked up. Do they think you bought the condo with monopoly money? She asked dryly. I almost laughed, but it caught in my throat. They're saying they funded the down payment, that they paid for part of the mortgage, that I've been living here on their dime. She gave a small nod, opening a drawer. Let's start here. Bank statements. Email trails, anything showing how you paid. I pulled out a thick folder I'd prepared the night before, every pay stub from the past 5 years, wire transfer confirmations, the certified mortgage approval in my name. I'd even printed the email from my realtor congratulating me on closing. I bought that place myself, I said, voice sharper now. Every cent came from my account. Ms. Denning slid a page from the stack and raised an eyebrow. You were approved solo, no co-signer. Correct. No financial gift letters on file. None, they didn't even know I'd bought the place until I moved in. She leaned back, a small, satisfied smile curling at the corners of her mouth. Then this will be fun, I blinked. Fun. Most people don't walk in with their case already gift-wrapped, she said. You've got receipts, they've got what? A story and a new car in the driveway. They spent my dad's insurance money on that car, I added. Ms. Denning's smile widened, now fully amused. Even better. She reached into a drawer, pulled out a document with her firm's letterhead, and started typing in crisp, precise keystrokes. We'll file a response denying their claim of ownership, then we'll hit back. Hit back, I echoed. She looked up, eyes gleaming with quiet resolve. A counterclaim, for slander, harassment, and filing a false property claim in bad faith. You have a clean paper trail, they don't. We'll file a motion to dismiss and request restitution. My breath hitched. So, I'm not crazy for thinking I could fight this. You're not crazy, she said. You're just tired of being taken advantage of. That sentence hit me square in the chest. I nodded, blinking fast. She kept typing. Let them think this lawsuit is leverage. Let them believe they've got you cornered. What they've really done is open a door they can't close. The words sent a chill down my spine, but not from fear. From clarity. For once, I wasn't reacting. I was preparing. As Ms. Denning printed the draft of our filing, I noticed a photo on her desk, her with a teenage girl who looked just like her. My daughter, she said, catching my glance. Smart, stubborn, and allergic to being underestimated. I smiled. Sounds familiar. She passed me the draft, her red pen already circling key lines. This part's your story, read it, own it. I took the pages, heart pounding in a new way now, not from anxiety, but from something closer to relief. This was the first time in months I had something solid to stand on. Something stronger than just my word, paper, proof, and someone who believed me enough to go to war with it. I left her office just after 5, the counterclaim in my bag and a fresh weight lifted off my shoulders. As I stepped out into the fading Tulsa light, my phone buzzed, a message from Rachel. Can we talk? No punctuation, just enough to stir up doubt. I didn't reply. I was done being their designated fixer, their walking piggy bank, their silent witness. That night I placed all the legal documents on my kitchen table. I lit a candle, I poured a glass of wine, and I whispered something into the quiet that felt new and final. Not this time. They wanted war, then they'd finally learn what it felt like to fight someone who wasn't afraid anymore. The next morning started quiet. I was sitting by my living room window, half distracted by the swirl of steam from my coffee mug when I heard it, a knock at the door. Soft, hesitant, too familiar. I opened it to find Rachel standing there, makeup-free, hair tied in a loose bun, wearing one of those oversized sweatshirts she always stole from me in high school. But her expression was what stopped me. Not smug, not entitled, just scared. Her eyes were red. Puffy, she didn't say hi. Can I come in? She asked, voice small. I hesitated, then stepped aside. Not because I was feeling generous, but because I wanted to hear the performance live. She stood awkwardly in the middle of the room like she didn't recognize it anymore, which made sense. It was never hers to begin with. Dad's in the hospital, she said finally. I blinked. What happened? Chest pains, overnight. Mom rushed him in around 3 a.m. I set down my mug. Is he okay? They're monitoring him. No heart attack yet, but it's coming. Doctors said surgery has to happen soon. I waited. Let the silence speak for me. She glanced around the apartment, eyes landing on the stack of legal papers still spread across the coffee table. She didn't comment, then she looked at me, really looked at me. Emily, her voice cracked. Please help us. I didn't move. Sell the condo, she said. Use the money to pay for Dad's surgery, it's the only way. A beat passed, then another. And slowly, so slowly, I turned and walked to the window. Outside, sunlight glinted off the polished hood of her new car, parked perfectly by the curb. The silver Honda, gleaming, untouched, a badge of betrayal on 4 wheels. I tilted my head toward it. Sell the car first. She didn't answer. I mean it, I said, turning back to face her. That car, that's what Dad's life cost me. You don't get to cry now and pretend it didn't happen. Her bottom lip trembled. I didn't know, you didn't ask. I just thought Mom said it was fine and that the money was there. Yeah, because I put it there. Rachel stepped closer. Look, I know I've made mistakes, but this is different. This is Dad. He's sick. Please don't do this out of spite. You're confusing boundaries with spite, I said. And maybe if you all had cared this much before a lawsuit showed up at my door, we wouldn't be here. I didn't know about the lawsuit, she said quickly. I narrowed my eyes. Really? I swear. Mom didn't tell me until after. I tried to talk her out of it. I didn't believe her, not fully, but the fear on her face seemed real enough. You know what's funny? I asked, my voice low. 3 days ago I was the selfish one, the one who never gives, the one who makes everything about herself. She swallowed. I didn't mean it. You never corrected Mom or Dad when they said it. You just stood there, benefiting. She blinked fast. I didn't know how to fix it. You don't fix things by suing someone. I'm not them, she said, a little louder now. I didn't file anything, I'm just asking for help. And I'm telling you, I replied, that you need to start helping yourselves. Rachel dropped into the nearest chair, burying her face in her hands. I don't know what to do anymore. Then maybe it's time you learned. She sat there for a long moment, hunched over, silent. I'll sell the car, she whispered eventually. If it'll make a difference, I'll sell it. I didn't move, didn't thank her, didn't comfort her, because it wasn't my job to praise her for cleaning up a mess she helped make. He's stable for now, she said. They're scheduling surgery for the morning. I nodded. She stood slowly, wiping her face. You'll be at the hospital, I hesitated, then shook my head. No, not yet. She opened the door, paused with her hand on the knob. You're really not the villain, you know. I know, I said. She left without another word. I sat in the silence that followed, surrounded by the sound of nothing but my own breath. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel guilty for saying no. Because somewhere between their accusations and my exhaustion, I had stopped apologizing for not setting myself on fire to keep them warm. The nights before big moments are rarely quiet. And this one, it throbbed with 1,000 unspoken memories. It was the evening before our court date. I sat cross-legged on my living room floor, the soft glow of my desk lamp barely touching the corners of the room. In front of me, a fortress of file folders, neatly labeled tabs and color-coded highlights, all proof. Cold, factual, unforgiving proof that everything I'd said was true. And yet, I kept hearing Dad's voice in my head. You're selfish. This is your family. That phrase had lived rent-free in my head for weeks now, echoing at the worst possible times. Brushing my teeth, cooking dinner, walking past old photos on my shelves. The photos were still there, by the way. I hadn't taken them down. A younger me, beaming with a sense of belonging. Mom's arms around me, Dad's proud eyes, Rachel's easy smile before the wedge of entitlement drove itself into our bond. Those images stared back at me now, asking silent questions. When did it all change? Were you blind or just hopeful? My phone lit up once, then again. Group chat, family update thread. I hadn't left it, just muted it. Rachel, surgery scheduled for 9 a.m. Dad's stable tonight. Mom, please pray. Cousin Blake, thinking of you guys. No one tagged me. No one asked if I'd be there. It was their thread now. I was just a ghost with read receipts. I picked up my court folder and began flipping through one last time. Mortgage statements, loan approvals, wire transfers. My life in paper trail form. My defense wasn't emotion, it was ink. Around 10 p.m., I grabbed my coat and keys. No destination in mind, just the need to breathe. I ended up outside the hospital, not inside, just nearby. It was quiet at that hour. Just a few nurses heading to their cars and a security guard watching from the entry desk. I didn't park. I didn't even turn the engine off. I just sat across the street, staring up at the fourth-floor windows, wondering which one belonged to Dad's room. Wondering if he'd say it again tomorrow in court. She's selfish. Or worse, pretend none of this ever happened. I thought about going in. But then I remembered the moment at the kitchen table. The lawsuit. The fake receipts. The expression on Mom's face like she was the one being betrayed. I remembered how easy it was for them to weaponize guilt. And how hard it had been for me to stop trying to earn love that should have never been conditional in the first place. So no, I didn't go inside. Instead, I whispered something I never imagined saying out loud. I'm done being your scapegoat. And I meant it. Back home, I sorted everything once more. The case binder. A backup drive of emails. I even rehearsed answers to questions I wasn't sure the judge would ask. And just before I went to bed, I stared at my bedroom ceiling and whispered again. I'm not saving anyone who's already holding the match. That night, I didn't dream. And for once, I didn't feel like I had to. The courthouse was colder than I expected. Not in temperature, though the air conditioning was aggressive, but in energy. Every hallway, every bench, every polished marble tile seemed to hum with unspoken tension. Like a place built not for justice, but for confrontation. I sat in the wooden pew outside courtroom 2B, legs crossed, file folder clutched like a lifeline. My lawyer, Ms. Denning, beside me in a navy blue suit sharp enough to cut glass, was calm, focused. Typing something on her tablet like this was just another Tuesday. For her, it probably was. For me, it was everything. Breathe, she said without looking up. You've already won, they just don't know it yet. The doors opened. A bailiff called our names. Marks v. Marks. The last name echoed in my head like a warning. It was all there on the docket in black and white. My parents suing me over a condo they didn't buy, didn't help with, didn't even congratulate me on when I moved in. I walked in first, sat where I was told. Ms. Denning on one side, a courtroom assistant offered me water. I didn't take it. I didn't want to hold anything that could shake in my hand. Then came Mom, Rachel, and finally Dad. He was pale, gaunt, thinner than the last time I saw him, but his eyes were alert, his jaw tight. He refused the wheelchair the nurse offered him, choosing instead to walk in under his own power, slow but deliberate, like a man making a statement. Rachel didn't look at me. Neither did Mom. Their attorney, a man named Clifford Brooks with a beige tie and a permanently furrowed brow, stood and introduced their side. Your Honor, the plaintiffs assert that Ms. Emily Marks acquired her condominium using funds provided in part by her parents, the plaintiffs in this matter. They believe they are entitled to partial ownership or financial restitution. The judge, a stern-faced woman with sharp features and a voice like gravel, nodded once. Ms. Denning. Denning rose like she'd been waiting her whole life for this. Your Honor will present full financial documentation showing that my client, Emily Marks, independently purchased her property with no assistance, monetary or otherwise, from the plaintiffs. We will also submit evidence indicating that this suit is not only without merit, but retaliatory in nature. The judge raised an eyebrow. Retaliatory, Denning didn't flinch. Yes, Your Honor. Following a personal dispute over misused insurance funds and withheld medical records, my client was threatened, harassed, and ultimately served with this claim as a means of coercion. Let's proceed. They called Mom to the stand first. She was dressed like it was Sunday service, pearls, modest heels, a pale pink blouse with a small brooch. She even dabbed her eyes before she began. Tell us about the condo, their lawyer prompted. Well, Mom said with a small tremble in her voice, Emily had been struggling financially, and we, being her parents, wanted to help. We gave her money here and there, for groceries, for bills. We didn't think anything of it. Family helps family, you know. I almost laughed. The judge didn't. And how much did you give her toward the condo? Mom hesitated. I don't remember the exact amount. An estimate? Several thousand, I suppose, over time. Maybe 8 or 9,000. Ms. Denning scribbled something. I stared straight ahead, jaw tight. They moved on to Dad next. He looked tired, but not fragile, not like the version of him the night of the kitchen blow-up. I always supported my daughter, he said. I wanted her to succeed, but we made sacrifices. I worked overtime when she was in college. I delayed surgeries. I sold a few personal items when she was short on rent. I couldn't stop myself. My head snapped up. What rent? Ms. Denning placed a calming hand over my wrist. Let it go, she whispered. The judge turned to me. Ms. Marks, do you have documentation to support your side of the claim? I stood, walked to the witness box. My voice didn't shake, not once. Yes, Your Honor, every cent. I laid the folder on the desk like it was an offering of truth. I've included my bank records for the past 5 years showing deposits from my employer, mortgage statements in my name, the wire transfer confirmation from my account to the title company. I've also included emails with my realtor, all time-stamped, showing no mention of my parents. There is no cosigner, no financial gift letter, no shared deed, no contribution. I took a breath. And in addition, I've included notes from my health insurance provider confirming I've been covering a family policy, including my father's, on my own for the past 3 years, without reimbursement. A pause. The judge flipped through the file. Silent, thorough, then she turned to Mom. Do you have receipts for the contributions you claim to have made? Mom stammered. We didn't keep them, we trusted her. Judge raised a brow. So no bank transfers, no checks, no cash withdrawals with a paper trail. Mom shook her head, shrinking in her seat. Then came the moment that snapped the tension like a dry twig. Ms. Marks, the judge asked, why do you think your parents filed this claim? I didn't blink. They spent my insurance money on a new car for my sister, then tried to guilt me into covering surgery costs with money they no longer had. And when I said no, they decided to punish me. The courtroom stayed silent. No whispers, no gasps, just a quiet hum of recognition. I looked over at Rachel. She didn't meet my eyes, but her fingers curled tightly in her lap. The judge leaned back, her voice low but decisive. I've seen enough. The judge's gavel didn't slam like I thought it would. It was more like a steady tap. Final, measured, quiet like the sound of a chapter closing. In light of the documentation provided, the court finds no legal basis for the plaintiff's claim of partial ownership. All documentation indicates the property was solely purchased and maintained by the defendant, Ms. Emily Marks. My breath caught. I didn't dare blink. In addition, the judge continued, the plaintiff's submission of undocumented claims and absence of financial evidence suggests this suit may have been filed in bad faith. The court awards the defendant restitution for legal fees. Further, a copy of this ruling will be forwarded for civil review should the defendant wish to pursue a counterclaim. Silence. Mom gasped like someone had struck her. Dad's face was stone, tight-lipped, unmoving. Rachel looked between them like she wasn't sure who she was supposed to comfort first. I stared down at the courtroom floor, blinking hard. I didn't feel victorious. Not in the way I'd expected. There was no rush of vindication, no dramatic exhale, just a quiet unburdening, like a door inside me had finally swung open. As we stood to leave, Ms. Denning touched my elbow. "You did beautifully," she whispered. I managed a nod. And then my phone buzzed. Unknown number call from Tulsa General Hospital. I hesitated, standing in the middle of the hallway as people shuffled past. Then I stepped aside and answered. "This is Emily." "Ms. Marks," said a clipped voice. "Your father's condition has changed post-op. Can you come immediately? Your mother asked us to contact you." I swallowed. "Is he?" "He's stable for now, but the complications are serious." I closed my eyes. "I'll be there." I didn't speak on the ride to the hospital. Ms. Denning offered to drive me, and I let her. There was something grounding in her silence, a lawyer who had seen hundreds of these stories play out and knew sometimes the real battle came after the courtroom victory. We pulled up to the emergency wing just after 3. The air smelled like disinfectant and tired hope. Rachel was pacing outside. She turned when she saw me, and for a moment her face softened. "They called you too," she said. I nodded. "What happened?" His blood pressure dropped suddenly after surgery. There was fluid in his lungs. They're monitoring him, but she trailed off, eyes glossy. "Where's Mom?" Rachel pointed to the waiting room. I followed her inside, where I found my mother slumped in a chair, clutching a foam cup like it was keeping her upright. When she looked up, her eyes were rimmed red. But there was no recognition, no gratitude, just accusation. "You see what you did," she said, voice shaking. I stared at her. "What I did?" "You dragged us into that courtroom. Today, while your father was recovering from surgery, you couldn't wait. You couldn't put your bitterness aside for one day." I laughed, quietly, bitterly. "You sued me, Mom." She stood up. "You abandoned us." "No, I defended myself, and I won." Her lip quivered. "Your father might die, and you're clinging to paperwork." I stepped forward slowly. "I tried to save him before anyone knew he was sick. You threw that chance away when you tossed my letter in the trash and bought Rachel a car instead." She didn't answer. Behind us, a nurse appeared at the double doors. "Family of Robert Marks." We all turned. "He's awake. One visitor at a time, please." My mother reached for her purse, but Rachel touched her arm. "Let Emily go." The words stunned us both. Mom blinked, confused. "What? She should be the first one to see him," Rachel said softly. "She tried to help, even when we didn't." I didn't move at first. I wasn't sure if this was some setup, but the nurse was already holding the door open, so I walked through. The hallway smelled like plastic and quiet grief. I stopped at the last door, bracing myself before I entered. Dad was awake. Hooked to monitors, eyes half-lidded, pale, but he was alive. He turned his head toward me, groggy but aware. I stepped closer, unsure. "Emily," he rasped. "You came." I nodded. "They called me." He looked like he wanted to say more but didn't know how. His eyes scanned my face, like he was searching for the version of me he remembered, and realizing I wasn't that girl anymore. "I fought the wrong war," he whispered, voice rough. "I nearly died, hating the one person who tried to save me." I sat on the edge of the bed, silent. "You were always the strong one," he murmured. "I just didn't want to need you." A long pause. Then I said, gently, "Next time. Read the fine print before you cash the check." He smiled, just barely. Then his eyes fluttered, closed. I sat there a while longer, holding the truth between us like something fragile and finally seen. I didn't go back to the hospital the next day. Not because I didn't care, but because I finally understood something. I wasn't the one who needed to do the fixing anymore. For once, it wasn't my responsibility to chase forgiveness or bandage their mess with silence. I had done my part. The court had confirmed it. My conscience had too. The text updates came through the group chat. Dad moved to rehab center. Resting, stable, surgery successful, recovery slow. No one addressed the trial. No one apologized, not directly. But actions speak louder than silence. The first sign something had shifted came 2 days later. I heard the Honda before I saw it. Rachel's car pulling into the parking lot of a small auto dealership on 51st Street. She didn't see me at the red light across the intersection, but I saw her hand over the keys, watched the dealer inspect the mileage, jotting things down on a clipboard. Later that day, I got a Venmo notification, $1,200 partial restitution for Dad's recovery costs. More to come, no note attached, no smiley face, but it was something. The following week, the court ruling came through in writing, official, sealed, final, case closed, all claims dismissed. But the judge had gone further than expected, ordering fines for slander and attempted property fraud, small but symbolic. Rachel and my mother were responsible for a portion of the legal costs. The ruling even recommended that they attend mediation sessions in lieu of further family court proceedings. I didn't attend those. I didn't need to. Instead, I drove by the rehab center on a rainy afternoon. Not to go inside, just to sit outside and see the lights on in my father's room. To know he was still there, still breathing, still recovering, quietly and perhaps finally reflecting. I think some part of me always wanted to believe he'd change. The next morning, Rachel showed up at my apartment again, but this time not to beg. She was sweaty, flushed, her arms full of boxes. "I sold the car," she said without preamble. "And we're moving." I looked past her and saw a U-Haul in the lot. My mother, standing beside it, holding a storage bin with kitchen utensils sticking out. "We found a small rental near 41st, Rachel added. "Nothing fancy, just enough for now." I nodded slowly. "Is Dad coming?" "When he's cleared for release, it's all ground level, no stairs." She placed a cardboard box on the edge of my doorstep, then stepped back. "This is for you." Inside was a faded family photo album, thick pages, messy corners, pictures of birthdays and camping trips and forgotten Christmas mornings. Photos I hadn't seen in years. Taped to the inside cover was a small envelope. I opened it carefully. Inside was a note. "He's resting at the rehab center. They say he'll walk again." It wasn't an apology, but it was a start. I looked up. "Need help with the rest of the boxes?" Rachel blinked. "You don't have to. I'm not offering for you. I'm offering for me." She smiled faintly. "Then yeah, I'd appreciate it." We didn't hug. We didn't cry. We just moved boxes, two sisters trying to find their footing again. And as she hauled the last bin from the back seat, I noticed something. Her nursing school ID clipped to her bag, laminated and proud. She was still trying, despite it all. Before they left, my mother stepped out of the truck. She didn't come to the door, didn't speak. But she gave a small, uncertain wave. I returned it. That was enough for now. 3 days later, I came home and found them sitting on my front step. My mother and Rachel, 2 duffel bags, puffy eyes, silence. The sky was gray and low, the air thick with that uneasy stillness before a storm. I paused at the edge of the parking lot, keys in hand, heart hammering before they even said a word. "We lost everything," Mom whispered when I got close. "The fines, the back payments, the deposit on the new place, it all added up." Rachel didn't speak. She just stared down at the gravel, jaw tight, her knuckles white around the handle of her suitcase. I didn't say anything. "We were wrong," Mom said after a moment, her voice barely above a breath. "About all of it." The words hovered in the air like fog, real, but not enough to see clearly through yet. I looked at them both. Their shoulders were hunched. No makeup, no pride. The exhaustion didn't look performative this time. It looked lived in. They weren't here to fight. They were here because they had nowhere else to go. "We don't expect anything," Rachel added quickly. "Just a place to sleep for a few nights until we can figure things out." I opened the door, but not before I said it. "You can stay," I said, standing in the doorway like a gatekeeper. "Until Dad's out of rehab." They both nodded, relief flooding their faces. "But," I added, raising a hand, "this is my house, that means my rules." Mom straightened a little, some part of her instinctively resisting the phrase. "I'm serious," I said. "There's no discussion, no whispering behind doors, no guilt trips. You clean up after yourselves, you contribute where you can, and you do not ever question why I lock the office door or keep receipts in the kitchen drawer." Rachel opened her mouth, thought better of it, nodded. "And if either of you try to turn this into a power game," I said, my voice low and steady, "you'll be out by morning." No second chances. They understood me now. Not the old me, the accommodating daughter, the ever-patient sister, but this version. The one who had finally figured out that boundaries weren't cruelty, they were survival. Rachel dragged her suitcase in first, stepping quietly over the threshold like she was entering holy ground. My mother hesitated, hand hovering near the doorframe, as if unsure how to move through a space where she wasn't in charge. When she finally crossed the threshold, she murmured, "I'll make dinner." I raised an eyebrow. "Don't touch the cast iron, that's mine." A flicker of something passed over her face, half amusement, half regret. Got it. We spent the evening in near silence. Rachel washed dishes. Mom chopped onions with mechanical focus. I sat on the edge of the couch, flipping through a closed laptop, pretending to work. At some point, I heard Mom hum, just a little. A note or two from a song I recognized from my childhood, one she used to sing when she thought no one was listening. I didn't stop her. But I didn't join in either. Later that night, I passed the hallway where they'd set up the air mattress. Rachel was already asleep. Mom was sitting upright, legs curled beneath her, staring at a photo she'd pulled from the family album. I paused. She looked up at me. "You were wearing overalls in this one," she said quietly, holding it out. 6 years old. We were at Keystone Lake. I glanced at the photo. I remembered that day, Dad fishing, Rachel whining about the bugs, me thrilled just to roast marshmallows with a stick I found on the trail. "We used to be happy," she said. "No," I said gently. "We used to pretend better." She didn't argue. I left her there, clutching the memory. And for the first time since the lawsuit began, I fell asleep with my door closed and didn't worry whether they'd try to pick the lock. Because this time, I wasn't afraid of them. This time, they were the ones under my roof. The day of Dad's discharge came quietly. No fanfare, no flowers, just a call from the rehab nurse. "He's cleared to leave this afternoon. Will someone be picking him up?" There was a long pause before I said, "I will." I didn't tell Mom or Rachel. They were both out, job interviews, maybe errands. But for once, I didn't feel the need to explain myself. The ride to the rehab center felt surreal. I half expected to feel nervous, but mostly I just felt ready. When I arrived, he was already dressed. Gray slacks, an old sweater I remembered from my college graduation, and shoes that looked stiff from disuse. He sat in a wheelchair by the front desk, hands folded neatly in his lap. He looked smaller somehow. When he saw me, something flickered in his expression. Not surprise, not relief, something deeper. Recognition. I signed the papers, thanked the nurse, wheeled him outside to my car. He didn't speak until we were halfway home. "I didn't expect you," he said. "I know." Silence again. Then softly, "You didn't have to come." I glanced at him, then back at the road. "Maybe not, but I did." He nodded as if that answer was enough. When we reached the house, I parked and got out to open his door. As he steadied himself on the curb, I held out my arm. He hesitated, then took it. We moved slowly toward the front steps. Right before I opened the door, he stopped. "Emily." I turned. He looked up at me, voice thin but steady. "I fought the wrong war. I know. And I nearly died hating the one person who tried to save me." I didn't cry, I didn't speak. I just opened the door and let him walk in. Because sometimes forgiveness isn't loud, it's a doorway, and a choice to keep it unlocked. Weeks passed. Not fast, not slow, just enough time for routines to shift. Dad settled into a quieter rhythm, moving from room to room with a cane and a notebook, always scribbling something down. Rachel found a part-time job at a local clinic. Mom cooked more than she spoke. No one brought up the lawsuit again. And then one evening a small envelope appeared on my bedroom door. No note, just my name in familiar handwriting. Inside was a card, 3 words on the front, "Thank you, Emily." Inside, all 3 of their signatures. No dramatic paragraphs. No excuses. Just that. Later that week, they invited me to dinner. Not at my place, not in some fancy restaurant, but at the little rental they'd finally moved into. A 2-bedroom near downtown. Modest, clean, quiet. When I walked in, the scent hit me first, rosemary, garlic, that slow-cooked stew Mom used to make when I was little. My favorite. There were no speeches, no forced smiles, just bowls passed around the table. Clinks of silverware. And at one point, Rachel reaching across the table to refill my glass without a word. And somehow, that was louder than any apology. After dinner, Mom pressed something into my hand as I got up to leave, an old photograph of me and Dad at Keystone Lake. We were laughing. I had chocolate on my face. He was mid-laugh, looking at me like nothing else in the world mattered. He found it last week, she said. He wanted you to have it. I stared at the photo. Not as a keepsake, but as proof that before everything cracked, we really had something. And maybe, just maybe, we could have something again. Not what we were, something better. 1 year later, I stood under soft stage lights, holding a microphone with both hands. The community center gym had been transformed, round tables with white cloths, rows of folding chairs filled with quiet chatter, and a hand-painted banner reading, "Patient Support Fundraiser, because no one fights alone." Dad was in the front row, a cane resting beside him, his posture straighter than I'd seen in years. Mom sat beside him, hands folded, nodding at every word. Rachel worked the check-in table near the doors, greeting people, managing donations with a practiced ease. The MC cleared his throat and gestured toward me. And now, a few words from someone we owe a great deal to, Robert Mark's daughter, Emily. I swallowed. Not nerves, not fear, just the weight of a full circle. I stepped forward, mic close. "Hi," I said, my voice small but sure. "I'm Emily Marks. I was once called selfish for protecting what was mine. I was told I turned my back on family, but here's the truth." I paused. Dad looked up, eyes locked on mine. "Sometimes justice looks like a court ruling, and sometimes it's just finally being seen." A hush fell across the room. A few nods, a few quiet exhales. I never wanted to win, I wanted to be heard. I wanted honesty, respect. A seat at a table I helped set. I looked down at Dad, his eyes wet but clear. "And now, I'm not just part of the story, I'm the reason we're still writing it." The room broke into applause, not wild or showy, just warm. As I stepped down from the stage, Dad reached out and squeezed my hand. No words, but this time he didn't need any. "Thank you for staying with Emily through her fight, her fall, and her rising." Where did this story hit you the hardest? Share your moment in the comments, I'll be reading every one.